Is incel a slur?
It was like seeing the incels rise up again. I was like, I need to come back right now. The
Oh, you
people
wanted
need
to come
saving.
back.
Right.
You're just
Listen,
putting
I
it
know
on
you're.
to appease your incel fans. Like,
No,
That's the thing about the incels.
Okay, right there. Complete, utter incel.
When most people talk about and use the phrase incel, they're generally talking about males, and they're talking about incels as like it's some crazy fringe or inherently bad group of people. But what does the phrase incel actually mean? Its definition is right there, abbreviated in the word. It means involuntarily celibate. And I wonder if the people in these clips realize just how many of their fans or viewers are technically incels. And if they, and others who use this phrase in a negative way, are actually meaning to refer to some other more specific group of people, it's certainly not clear with the choice of that word incel, which again is literally an abbreviated word for involuntarily celibate. Because by definition, most young men are technically incels, at least in the West or at least in America. According to Pew Research, 30% of young men in America report having no sex in the past year. Of that 30%, let's assume 3% of that 30% are actually celibate by choice. That might even be a little bit high, but maybe they just really don't want to for some reason, or they're waiting for marriage or whatever. So in total now, we have 29% of young men right there who are incels by definition. Also, according to Pew Research, 63% of young men age 18 to 29 are single. 30% of these have no sex, like we just covered, but it basically means there's another 33% of men who are single but have had sex at least once in the last year. Now, if you are single but you have had sex once a year, are you an incel? What if you have had sex 5, 10, or 15 times, but you'd rather be having sex 100 to 200 times? Is this not still technically involuntarily celibate, at least most of the time? I mean, I would say technically yes, based on the meaning of the word incel. So of the 63% of young men who are single, how many are actually having sex on a consistent basis? We know from dating app data that women find 80% of men unattractive, and therefore 20% attractive. These 20% of men would be getting the majority of the right swipes, majority of the dates, and therefore majority of the potential of having sex. So 20% of the 63% of single men represents 12.6% of the young male population. This group of people could be considered not incels, as this group of people in general would be able to have sex if they wanted to. Then there are the 37% of young men in relationships. Most of these men would not be incels, but not all of them. There are various estimates of sexless relationships among young people, with some estimates even getting as high as 18%. But let's take a low estimate to be conservative and assume 5% of young men in relationships are either having no sex or much less sex than they would want. 95% of this group of people in relationships represents another 35.2% of the young male population, and these men are not incels. So adding this 35.2 to the 12.6% of men who are single but not celibate, and we get 47.8% of young men. Adding that 1% we discussed of the estimate of young men who are just celibate by choice, and again, that's just an estimate, and we arrive at 48.8% of young men who are not incels. And therefore, 51.2% of young men who are incels, which represents a majority of young men. Of course, this is some quick math, but still, if you think these numbers are drastically off, please feel free to let me know in the comment section below. Over 50%, 51.2% of young men are technically involuntarily celibate or incels. And yet people throw around the word incel like it's some fringe minority of people. I'm not making this video calling for any kind of censorship, but I am making it because I find it interesting how the word incel has become essentially a socially acceptable insult or slur to shame a growing number of young men. The snarky and judgmental way many people dismiss incels, I find to be mean-spirited and frankly disgusting at times. Over 50% of young men, surely the vast majority of these young men are good people and are not inherently flawed. Yet this dismissive attitude towards incels goes largely unchallenged in our society, as men as a group do not fall into one of the groups we consider victims. So with that said, I'll end the video here. I'd like to hear your thoughts below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Either way, thanks for watching and have a good day.